Tonight, we are blessed to have another returning RCM speaker. He is a deacon and regular preacher at Grace Baptist Church of Los Baños. He is also a graduate of the Grace Ministerial Academy. To speak on tonight's topic, using AI for Productivity Part 2, here is Deacon John Medalla.
Thank you, Dara. Good evening to everyone. Let me remind you that our topic for tonight is the second part of our initial series of regarding AI for productivity, using AI for productivity. The last time, our 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 first speaker, our previous speaker, Deacon Ian, taught us or gave instructions on how to use examples of using the AI, specifically Chat GPT, and he provided guidelines for students on the responsible use of it. But tonight, we will look into a bigger picture, not just for the students, but for even professors, teachers, and for all of us, uh, especially believers, in line with this topic. This is a topic which is, as mentioned earlier, is a buzzword. It is uh, influencing and encompassing all of us in various aspects of our lives, not only in the academe, but even in our individual lives as God's people and in various.
So let me start by okay for a while. Okay, let me start by giving you there if many headlines are happening or are written in various publications. Uh, According to Time Magazine, the one article says the AI arms race is changing everything. This pertains to the artificial intelligence, not in the arms race as we might um, presume it to be regarding wars, but it is changing the race, especially of the tech companies. Many tech companies are investing or pursuing the AI field, technological field, because of its growing influence, impact, and it is changing the course of the way these big high-tech companies are pursuing their businesses. Another article from Forbes magazine or Forbes magazine says, artificial intelligence jobs, how will AI change the job market? In other words, this because of the emergence of AI, the job market will drastically change. And this is a concern not only most specifically for employees in the job market, because jobs specifications as well as needs will change in the marketplace. And another article from Yahoo Finance says AI could become the biggest bubble of all time. And the intention of this article is to state that this is AI business or pursuit is being pursued by businesses, and in fact, it is being funded by many companies. Hundreds of millions of dollars are now being invested, and it is changing the landscape of uh, the investment world. In fact, the crypto has been bumped because of AI investment opportunities and needs. And this is the AI is changing uh, all aspects in the business as well as in not only in the academe but even among employees. And so there is now that concern, perhaps apprehension, anxiety, and fear grips many because of these developments that is happening around us. And the changing times require proper grounding on absolute truth. Because for most of us, I do believe that we know that when people abandon absolute truth and choose to believe their own perceived truth, it becomes a problem. And that is why there is fear. As I've mentioned a while ago earlier, there is apprehension, anxiety, or even fear gripping many, though it is though many are enticed by this development, but there is also fear. And how should we approach such fear and anxiety? We need to have two things. We will be discussing this in two aspects. We need to understand what is happening, or we would look into the knowledge issue. And secondly, we would look into the faith issues involved so that we can properly uh, we can think responsibly as well as think biblically, especially for believers, especially for God's people. And let us look into the first aspect, the knowledge issue. And I will be dealing with this in three aspects: historical, informational, and on the ethical and moral aspect. In the historical aspect, when there is progress and development, it brings both good and bad effects. We all know this. This happens in not only in the field of AI or technology, but in various areas of our life. When there is progress, there are various effects that 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 comes with it. And let me cite the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century. When tractor was invented, three-fourths of farm workers were displaced because of this uh, development in society, the invention of the tractor. Many of the farm workers were displaced because machines took what used to be the work of manual labor. It was replaced by the work of a machine in the form of the tractor. But not only that was in the 18th century, in the Industrial Revolution, but now in our time, we have what we call the knowledge revolution of the 20th and 21st century. And according to the World Economic Forum, because of AI, 85 million jobs are expected to be displaced. But on the other hand, 95 million jobs will be generated as a result of this development. So this is what happens. And we all know that even in the despite what had happened in the industrial revolution, the workers back then had opportunities for work in some other areas. And so what is the lesson, or perhaps my point in helping us to look into this issue? The point is, progress brings transformational effect, but not total displacement. There will be opportunities available. Yes, there will be transformation in the way we do things, in our livelihood, in the way we study, in whatever areas of our lives. There will be transformational effect, but there is not such a thing as total displacement, because there will be opportunities available despite because of this development that happens in our society. The second thing that I would like for us to look into is in the informational aspect. We need to understand, we have to know what is happening around us, and that is why when there is advancement in science and technology, there is enormous data and information available. Because of the spur of science and technology, several researches, several information and data are now available for us, for each and every one of us. And the advancement, and according to studies, in the year 2020, the global information uh, available, there is what they said that there is 44 zettabyte of data generated, or there was 44 zettabyte of data generated in the year 2020. Now it is projected in the year 2025 that we will be having 175 zettabyte of data generated. Now, I don't know how big that's, but one zeta is equal to 1 plus 21 zeros. I don't know if you can imagine how huge that data is that is being generated annually. In fact, they say that the annual data that we generate, or information and data we generate as a result of this advancement of science and technology, is more than the last 100 years of data and information we had. And this is how huge this data uh, we have in our hands. And so, advancement of technology means we need to gather and evaluate this data so that it will be of use and of help and benefit for us as a people globally and even locally. And imagine those data and information we have. But thirdly, let us look into another aspect, which is the ethical and moral concerns. We have to know and understand what happens as a result of these things that are happening before us. Ethical considerations cannot cope with the exponential growth of technology because of the increasing or the exponential growth in science and technology. What happens is that those people who are concerned of the ethical and moral effects of such advancement of technology cannot cope in coming up with ethical standards in order to guide, in order to protect, in order to ensure that it will not hamper or bring disaster rather than good to mankind. And we need to, there is that inability to reflect because of the rate of change. And we all know that there are there are two kinds of AI technology available. We have the narrow AI, or narrow artificial intelligence, which is basically used for specific applications. And for example, like the drones that we have, it is useful for various means. It is useful in agriculture and for other researches or other means, but drones are also used and armed for destructive means. This is a map from the World Economic Forum pertaining to drones used for security, and just look at the data available, the states that have used armed drones, and there are states that possess armed drones. And in the map also, we find there areas where armed drones have been used. And this is what is happening in the Ukraine-Russia war that we are seeing presently, and in various areas around the world. Around the world, a good thing can be used for bad reasons, and who knows how this will be used in the future because of the growth and expansion of such technology. There is that threat and danger that a good technology will be used for bad, for ill effects. But not only is not only is the narrow AI can be used for bad, but it can also be used for good. Remember during the pandemic, because of the advent of this technology, it was easy for the medical community to be able to deliver the vaccines that we needed in a short span of time. Initially, it was the vaccines were developed a decade or 5 to 10 years, but it was in a short span of time there was the development of the vaccine, and it was because of such technological advancement that the medical institution or field was able to develop such good results, which help us tremendously in protecting us from um, what happened during the pandemic. But again, when we talk of another field of AI is that what we call the artificial general intelligence, or this is perhaps what we would look into the uh, sci-fi things that we look into, and this is still in the development stage. But the problem with this form of technology, artificial intelligence technology, is that it is being developed by many for the wrong reasons, because it is meant, in fact, there is what many are having their brains frozen in the hope that one day when technology will be available, they will be able to download what is in that frozen brain in order to provide this means for the downloading of brain information in the future. And this is what happens because of the tremendous data we have. There are huge amount of data that needs to be analyzed, and this is where technology is needed. We need to AI can detect patterns in order to analyze this data, and finally they will be using these patterns to make decisions, and these decisions will be based on the ethical and moral foundations of those who have the information they are given. And this should warn us that even good things such as AI or artificial intelligence in sinful hands will have potential for ill. And that is why there's a need to understand the ethical and moral implications of such technological advancement, because man naturally, unaided or unguided in its ethical and moral principles, will make use of this for ill. An example may be in the line of medicine. Medicine is good for health reasons, but for others, this is used in the form of addiction. And that is why there are people who are addicted to medicines, and they use it for their own purposes, harmful purposes. And so in the data side, when much data and information is in the hands of people, it can also be used for oppressive means, or even to manipulate others, because if those who have this information and data will use them for unethical and immoral ways. So these are some aspects, the three aspects that we need to understand when we consider this issue of artificial intelligence. We need to understand the historical context or implications of technology, the informational advancement of data, and we have to be guided by the ethical and moral implications in the use of it. But more importantly, let me focus on the faith issues, because when we speak of faith issues, remember that Genesis 6:5 tells us the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of of man the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. This was in the context of the flood. This was how God perceive the thoughts of man, of the heart of man. And our another popular verse, Jeremiah 17 verse 9, tells us that the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? And these verses remind us of how uh, problematic man is if unaided by the Word of God. And this tells us how we need to look into this developing technology in the issue of faith. And in tackling the faith issue, we will be looking on three aspects. These are the thoughts of one scientist, author by the name of Derek Schumann, who wrote extensively, or who wrote a book about this issue of artificial intelligence. And we will look into three aspects: technological, and this is what I mean by it. People will have much optimism or undue pessimism of this technological advancement. People may wander into the extreme cases. They will be more optimistic of technology, or others will swing into a more pessimistic stand or understanding in the use of technology. So what do I mean by this? People have much those there are people who are overly optimistic, meaning they embrace the reductionist worldview, which means that technical problems can be solved by technical solutions. This is how they want to solve every problem. A technical problem can be only be solved by technical solutions, and one the term that has been coined related to this is what we call technicism. It is a form of idolatry. It is a form. It is a a form of idolatry because it is grounding its faith in technology. Rather than in trusting God, it trusts in the advancement of technology to solve the problems of man. But rather, the biblical way is for us to harness technology responsively, because it is part of the creation of God. The knowledge of man, which brings about advancement in technology, should be used and should propel us to harness technology responsibly, especially for God's people. And so we should reject the idea of technology as a villain or savior. 1 Corinthians 2:5 tells us, so that your faith may not rest in the wisdom of man, but in the power of God. We cannot rest in the wisdom of man, as Paul encourages the Corinthians during his time, but rather our trust is in the power of God. Technology is a tool, is a means, but we should not rest our hope in technology in itself. Another thing, the second part is on the ontological aspect, or the nature of being. And we should just not just want AI. Let us not just rest on what AI can do, but how man is distinct from technology. When I say ontological, there is that unbiblical understanding and view of man in elevating machines over man. There is that reductionist philosophy that people perceive that they elevate the status of machines in anthropomorphic, or what we call anthropomorphic machines, so that machines can provide solutions to the needs of man. And because of this reductionistic philosophy, two of which we need to be reminded of is physicalism, which says, or which tells us that nothing is over and above the physical. And another form of philosophy is Gnosticism, which says matter is evil. In other words, uh, we need to put our faith in the physical realm or world, rather than in the proper understanding of what man is before God. In fact, uh, in the field of therapy, there was this chatbot developed by the early AI proponent, uh, Joseph Baum, and it was used to the development of this AI was used to help out in the advancement of psychotherapy in the early 1960s. And what happened was that the proponent, Joseph Weizenbaum, concluded that there are limits to what computers to be ought to be ought to be put to do. In other words, we should not put our trust, or there are certain limitations which computers can do. And this was the Eliza chatbot that was made during that time in the early 60s. So this should remind us that AI can never replace human wisdom, care, and companionship. These machines, this advancement in technology can never replace human wisdom, care, and companionship. This is what Genesis we should be reminded of what Genesis 1:27 says. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. In other words, man is distinct from machine because of all the creatures that God made in the Genesis account. Only man was made in the image of God. To quote the Reformed theologian Herman Bavinck, he said, human beings does not bear or have the image of God, but he or she is the image of God. So this tells us of the importance of man, rather than trusting or replacing man by machines, as what many people believe or are thinking of in the advent of emerging technologies such as AI. But another thing, the third and last point that I would like to make as we consider faith issues is the creational. I do not mean, when I use the term creational, I do not mean in the aspect, in the way God created man, but rather in the creation of such technology. This is what we call the norms and bias in AI creation and design. Of course, this is a product of man's knowledge, product of man's intelligence and understanding. And so there are norms and biases in the creation and the design of such a technology. And let me note two things. There are real challenges in aligning AI systems with goals and values of the designer. So how will these people or the designers of this technology create such a technology? They have to factor in the goals and values of the designer because of the human factor brought into it, and they will have to grapple with a possible bias, for technology is not neutral. Remember, what they are using is what we call algorithms. These are sets of standards or sets of rules that they will be employing to help these machines or this technology, computer technology, to make the right, provide the right information, and thereby enable man to make the right decision. And this is the key, because technology is not neutral. There is that certain amount of bias or perhaps prejudice that will be brought into it. It can be racial bias, or racism, that would be incorporated into it. And so what creational norms should be put in place, and there should be certain things should be considered, like justice, cultural appropriateness, transparency, trust, and even stewardship. And this should be factored in the design, in the formulation of this technology, so that it would be of greater use. And so the issue here is that, or the challenge here is that there should be wisdom and discernment, for norms are not reducible to algorithms. That is what we need. Those people who are in this field of designing should need wisdom and discernment to be able to formulate the best possible algorithms that would minimize the biases and prejudices that would result, or that would affect the result of this information that would be generated, thereby will be the basis of such decisions. And another issue is, we have to we do not deny that there are undeniable redemptive applications of AI. This AI technology, as what I mentioned a while ago, has been helpful in the field of medicine, in the field of safety, in the field of environment protection, and in various aspects of our day-to-day life. And that is why in the creation of such technology, there needs to be a collaborative effort of various disciplines to direct technology in normative ways. In other words, various disciplines should be involved. This is not just for the scientists or for the computer scientists, for that matter, because all disciplines and field of human endeavor should be represented. And that is why there are groups have been formed, like AI for Good, AI for Earth, AI and Faith. These are groups wherein these people have gathered together, have formed themselves together to provide information, help, guidance, in order to collaborate and come up with the best possible ways to ensure that the formulation of this AI technology will follow some ethical standards or moral principles to govern its design and eventually its use. So, what happens next? What does it tell us? Wrong goals proceed to wrong directions. And that is why there is a need for the right understanding, or for collaborative efforts of those involved. Because when you start with the wrong goal, you will end up proceeding to develop such technological advancement for the wrong reasons and in the wrong directions. Proverbs 14 verse 12 tells us, there is a way that seems right to a man, but the end is the way of death. And there needs to be guidance as far as uh, what a man is doing in advancing his knowledge in technology for the good of humanity. And in conclusion, let me cite this statement by Derek Sherman, a, a scientist, a computer scientist, author, and professor at the same time, of which he was helpful in this faith issues. He is a believer, And this is what he said. Despite the possibilities for sinful distortions, AI is part of the exciting possibilities in creation that Christians can help direct in God honoring ways. So, believers or Christians for that matter, we have a greater role to play. Just imagine, remember that this data that I was talking about, this several zettabytes of data that is being brought into these huge computers annually. We have a part in in providing this data. Remember, whatever information you put in social media, you post or upload online in social media will form part of the data. So if you put in useless, harmful, and even unprofitable information, it will form part of the data that will be used in advancing this technology. So we need to be wise in our use of this technology that we have in social media, in whatever, in the online forum, because it will form part. And just imagine if Christians will help or will generate data and put on data and information that would be for the good. There would be data useful or helpful in advancing uh, things that would be used for good rather than for ill. And we need to be reminded by what Paul said in Romans 12 and verse 2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Remember the mind that we need as a result of our knowledge of who the Lord Jesus Christ is, because of our informed understanding of the Bible from the Word of God. This should renew. This should change our mind and help us to discern what things, information we need to bring into this in the data and information that will form part of this technology. In other words, not only do we need to put in the right knowledge or the right information and helpful knowledge, but likewise in whatever field and vocation you are in, you have a duty to be of help, as what I mentioned earlier in the creational aspect, because we cannot because you have a part to play in order to pursue the better good in advancing this technology. We cannot just lay on the side and not be involved, not only in practical ways but also in a prayerful way, so that this advancement of technology will form or will be used for the good of humanity and bring glory to God rather than destroy uh, lives or even portions of its effect in our day-to-day living. And with this thought, uh, it is a challenge on our part, especially for believers. And for students, you now have a part to play, not only in your studies, but in your chosen field or vocation in the future. It, it should guide you how you can provide an impact in your field of expertise or in your field of vocation, but also in pursuing your careers in whatever field God might call you in the future. And this, I hope, can help us think responsibly and biblically as we uh, proceed on in using and even in formulating this sort of technology that is advancing so rapidly, what we call artificial intelligence. That is the end of my talk. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you very much for your talk, Tito June. So we'll now move on to our Q&A portion, but just a few reminders first. Please keep your questions short and to the point so that we can have more time for many questions as possible. Please avoid asking questions regarding very specific cases that might involve sharing private information. For live questions, please use Zoom's raise hand function to be acknowledged by the moderator, or send them through the Zoom chat or privately to me or to our Zoom host, Sis Eliza. Those joining via FB Live may ask questions by sending them in the comment section or by sending a private message to the RCM FB page. So, Tito Jun, we have a lineup of questions here. So the first one is, mas ginagawang tamad ng AI ang mga estudyante. How would you react to these comments? Especially yung galing po to sa mga older generation, no, who did not have access to AI during their student years.
Yeah, it can provide such a unprofitable way of doing things, especially for students. And that is why there is one Christian scientist who, by the name of, let me look into the name of that person. And he is not only advocating for AI, but rather he is advocating for what he calls intelligence amplifying. Instead of artificial intelligence, he is advocating intelligence amplifying, meaning for example, he there is this, instead of letting students, or as opposed for students writing, as opposed to writing, helping students writing for them, there should be a development of AI wherein they will be you students will be helped to write better, rather than they will just download or this whatever material that they want to submit or to have, without really studying, or without really taking that effort for research and this is one aspect that Fred Brooks, a respected Christian computer scientist, wrote. It is time to recognize that the original goals of AI were not merely extremely difficult, but uh, because of such wrong perceptions, it sent the discipline off in the wrong direction. But again, as I've said, we need to develop AIs that would help people to write better, rather than writing it for them.
Okay, thank you po, Tito June. So, we have a thought po here, no? Someone shared this to me po. He wrote an article all by himself without the use of any AI productivity tool. When he tried to run a program to test if the article is AI generated, it showed that the article was AI generated. So sa madaling salita, he wrote it all by himself, yet it still resulted na AI generated daw po yung article. So what are your thoughts on these circumstances, no? So how will we evaluate authenticity if mismong these AI tools would lie to you that your article that you wrote by yourself is AI generated?
Well, we can explain it in various ways. Maybe the AI captured his thoughts after writing it. But anyway, the issue here is, if you wrote it honestly and your conscience tells you that you did your part, out of research or out of the effort you did, you should not be bothered about it. because if this is because of hard-earned labor and effort, and you don't have to worry about it. And perhaps this will now challenge professors, especially in the academe, on how to develop ways in uh, improving ways to make students labor, or to put them to task in providing for, how would I say this, in the research work, so that they will not be just dependent on the technology or the AI technology that we have in our present time. And that chat GPT 3.5, which was discussed by Deacon Ian last week, there is now the chat GPT 4, which will be launched towards the end of this year. And according to reports, it will be very, very much better than the version of chat GPT 3.5. In other words, there are many issues or concerns of the previous version of chat GPT 3.5, but this one will be much better according to uh, studies and reports as it will be launched. So there can be better results in terms of the information that will be generated by the new version.
Okay, thank you for that, Tito June. So we have another question here po. What practical ways or concrete examples can you think of how churches or individuals can use AI for redemptive purposes or in spreading the gospel?
I came across into one item or article that that says that AI can help in repurposing messages. For example, if you want to put online certain certain preaching or writings about biblical truth, and there is what is called now, you can, through AI technology, you can repurpose it so that you can post it online or through podcasts, that it will be helpful in providing information and using this technology to put online this truth and principles from the Word of God. So we can use it in a more positive, in a more helpful way, so that as believers, as Christians, we can flood or provide online information that would challenge them of biblical truth.
Okay, thank you, Tito Jun. In relation to that po, no, what are some potential abuses of how churches can use AI for bad purposes po, or for unintended harmful consequences po? What ways can you think of?
I'm not sure. I don't have any idea yet. But again, like what you mentioned a while ago, for students, it will make them become lazy and dependent rather than to work hard and to labor in their studies. It can be the same as in the context of the church, especially for those who are uh, studying the word and preparing these messages, that they would just depend on AI, and if they are not watchful and careful, it may provide wrongful truth, principles, and information that, if they're not careful, may not be biblically sound.
Oh, true, Tito. So, we have a thought po dito, no? So, it's about the strike happening ngayon po sa Hollywood na may relationship sa AI. So, there are writers na nagsa-strike or nagpo-protest kasi many productions today daw po are resorting to AI-generated scripts or stories. So, ang effect is madaming jobs nga po, or kanlabawa, a writer, at risk yung jobs nila ngayon because of these tools. So siguro po, no, for Christians who are considering this type of jobs din in the future, ano pong ma-advise nyo, or what tips can you give us on how we will handle this issue issues in the future.
Like what I mentioned a while ago, historically, this has happened in the past. Remember the development of science and technology from, as I mentioned a while ago, from the uh, from the from the agricultural revolution to the industrial revolution and now to the knowledge revolution. There were jobs who were not not anymore available because of advancement, but there were other jobs opened as a result of this development. And so, in some ways, it should challenge people to be more creative, to develop, to improve in the way they do things. Because if it can be done through AI, it means it can it is something which is routinary perhaps that can easily be duplicated or captured by AI, but in creative ways, people can provide or can learn and study that would uh, help them make use of their God-given abilities in order to gain uh, how would I say gain good income as a result of their abilities and gifts as given by God. And there's no short or simple answer to that question, but I do believe because man has been given by God that ability or the knowledge and insights, there will be opportunities available in whatever ways he may pursue it.
Right. Thank you for that, Tito June. So many questions and many debates po arising because of the issues brought by artificial intelligence, no? So again, thank you, Tito June, for answering the questions and for your talk. Deacon June shared with us tonight on how we can look at AI from a knowledge and more importantly from the perspective of the Christian faith. He challenges us to be discerning in our use of AI in our daily lives and vocations.